record on his computer. If you are so inclined to, to use it on the on the web online or on the web and not on your actual computer, then you have to use Jupyter. Just our notebook is available still, but we don't know for how long. So it may not be feasible for you to use it on notebook, but on what do you call it, on the our cloud. Also, it gets slow too. If people are using our cloud, you might actually notice it gets slower, so you don't get your work done on time. That's another thing. But feel free to use it on your computer, because I certainly do. So there's something called assignment 0, which I think is actually supposed to be relatively easy. So I'll just say for those who are coming in late, I did post my YouTube channel where the lectures will be at the end, and also the tutorial itself. I'm sorry, my GitHub, which you will see the code. Anyway, so you can see that for assignment 0, it's very easy. It's kind of just walking you through how to open up a project in our notebook, right? So you can see that if you're using Jupyter, you have to first log in. I do have a Jupyter account, not because I necessarily use it, but because I recognize that when I'm doing Python, I do use Jupyter, but not for R. So you can see that it actually allows you to use both R and Python and a couple other programs, which means that you have to be careful of what you're selecting, right? Because if you open up, for instance, let's say a notebook, the code you're actually using, I think it's actually, it could actually be Python. So yeah, just be careful. There is something for R Studio. When you open up a new page, you can either use R, which I have a couple of RMD files, and I have a couple of Python files. But yeah, so I don't use Notebook, I use R. So if you do want to download R on your computer, you first need to download base R and then R Studio, which you guys probably know. But anyways, you can see that he shows you how to create a project. And the point of creating the project is it actually gives you a working directory to store your files, basically, right? So you can see that if you go to, for instance, file, new project, right? So if you go to, let me see, new project, it gives you the ability to obviously to start a directory within R itself. I think I actually have one because I'm making an R package, but anyways, you would just click this. Whatever your project, I'm making both a Shiny package and R package, so I have my own project, but you can make yours too. He called his C33, the C32. It used to be the old version of the course. This is just a directory name which you're going to store your files, basically. Because once you actually create this repository within your actual R console, you'll actually notice that you can download tidyverse. Right. So how many of you have downloaded tidyverse? I will say there's actually a couple of ways to install a package. One thing is to actually go to the right-hand panel here. Oh, that's a good question. So he should have a page. So let me just make sure I can see. So I'm trying to make sure, I just want to see, I think there's something called C33 online, because he used, even though there's a C33 even though there's C33 on the page, he actually uses something else. He uses this website here, right? So you can see that you should be able to find assignment 0 here. So I'll just put the page here. Yeah, so you should be able to find it where exactly. So let me see, assignment 0, assignment 0. I don't know where he put it. Let me see. Anyways, I'll just put it here for you. I mean, I definitely for sure think it should be on his webpage, but here is assignment 0 for those of you who, and let's see if you can actually maybe you can open it. Maybe I'll just have to go 1 second. Because it should have been on, I don't know if he put it on his website. Let me just double check and see. Okay, thank you. I guess it's actually on Quirkus. But what you will see here, yeah, so maybe it's on Quirkus. Thank you for that, Layla. So what you actually see here, guys, is you will actually see update. So I think right now there's nothing, but he will actually post assignment. He'll post assignment 1 soon. And how it works in this course is that I think you actually have 4 hours to do it within a 48-hour period. So that will probably be posted sometime this week. But you can see that from assignment 0, which I thank you for Layla pointing out is on the Quirkus page, not on his website. So let me just double check. It's on his Quirkus page, it seems. You will actually see, yeah, so if I think it's on his Quirkus page. Let's double check. Yeah, it's on his Quirkus page for sure. Oh my God, look how many updates I have. Okay. Anyways, yeah, I think you'll find it here. So let me just see assignments. Yeah, here it is. It's under assignments. Okay, so the assignment 0 is not too dense, guys. What you'll actually see in assignment 0 is it asking you to just get started. So how many of you have not used R before? Has anyone not used R before? Because the real nitty gritty is actually here. The thing is, we're doing the R completely in base R, guys, which means that, sorry, not base R, in tidyverse, right? So you need this package. There's 2 ways to install. The first thing is literally to actually go into this thing here, as I was saying, and find tidyverse somewhere. But the other thing that I find more useful is to actually use the function called install.packages. Now, if you just type in tidyverse, I already have it installed, you will actually download the package. Now, here's the thing. You will actually notice that this is an external package, guys, which means that you cannot actually use this package once you've downloaded it, or sorry, once you've installed it. You cannot actually use this package to call the library because it's actually external, right? So you have to call the package to use the features. And once you do use it, you'll see that it will load a whole bunch of things, right? So I should have actually used, you'll see it will load this, which is what he has here, right? So these are the actual packages within R, right? So these are the packages within the tidyverse package. It's literally a compilation of packages, basically, because you could actually have installed each of these packages separately, but when you install tidyverse, you've actually installed them all, basically. We will probably in this course use all of these ones here a lot. So ggplot, tibble, tidy R, read R, and then dplyr a lot. Probably we will not use pers during our forecasts too much. We will use these ones here and then dplyr quite a lot, because you will find that with database manipulation, dplyr and tidy R will make your, it's, I don't know if you guys have used SQL and like in, some of you are in CS, kind of tidy R and dplyr kind of works like an SQL command. So you will see that the way you manipulate your data set with these 2 packages is sort of like an SQL sequence, right? So if you've done that in any kind of CS class, you'll probably be familiar with the way it actually works. It's just the way he made the package. Yeah, so the name sounds so weird because, so the packages are made by Hadley Wickham, and I guess he wanted them to sound a bit like cats, maybe he had, you know, because you can see that someone like her for cats, he probably himself has a bit of, maybe he has cats at home, but it's made by Hadley Wickham. And if you look at his Twitter page, he's a bit of a character. So it makes sense that the packages he came up with are very strange. Yeah, I think it's just made by a guy who has a very funny way of like naming his packages. So yeah. So I should have actually opened a notebook, to be honest. But anyways, if you're on your computer, here's how you open a notebook, right? So once you've opened it, I think the way you guys are going to submit your own assignments is using HTML. But if any of you have LaTeX on your computer, you can actually change the way in which you actually way you view your actual files. You can knit to PDF only if you have LaTeX in your computer, right? So it creates nicely LaTeX files. And if you do anything with heavy math mode, you might find yourself using knit to PDF. Otherwise, the default is knit to HTML, which will give you sort of like a web page, like what you see here. It will look like this, right? Okay, so the first thing he's asking you guys to do, and I guess I'll leave you guys to kind of toggle with it, is the first thing to do is obviously download library tidyverse, right? And then he has a couple of things he wants you to do. In particular, the first thing he wants you to do is create R chunks, right? So a chunk is something you can see that you can only actually code, guys, inside these chunks here, right? So this part here, so if I want to erase this part and just write like, this is tutorial 0, or this is tutorial 1, you know, we are working on assignment 0. You will see that I'm writing outside the chunks, basically, right? So if I just erase all this stuff and I just kind of preview the knit to HTML, I'll just call it, I don't know, let me just call it. And this is another thing, you have to actually save your thing, but let me just save it to, let's say, you know, assignment 0. You will see that what it will actually give me is just an HTML file with a plot and me saying this is tutorial, this is assignment 0. So cars is an actual data set, guys, within base R. That is why when I ran the code, this plot generated basically, right? But you can see that the actual coding happens inside the chunks. Now, later on in the course, when we get more into, you will actually see that there are ways to hide these chunks. So if you're doing a formal report, for instance, you may not want to display your code inside the actual report. There are ways to hide the actual code and only display the output. You probably will submit an HTML, but you can submit in PDF too. So I don't think he doesn't impose you submit in PDF, but you can if you're so inclined to do so, right? But I think that the way it's probably easiest because you're submitting via Quarkus to do it using HTML. But honestly, PDF works just as well. It's just sometimes if you don't have LaTeX, it's hard to make it work. Yeah, if you want to use PDF, that should be perfectly fine. Even I use PDF. I don't use HTML, so I totally understand. You can use PDF too. So Layla, RMD is the actual R file, but when you, so that's a good question. RMD is the R file, right? But when I knit, so when you knit your R file, it generates different files. It will either generate an HTML file, a PDF, or a Word document, depending on what you knit to. So RMD is the file in which you do the manipulations in. So your R coding, your write-up is in the RMD file. But when you knit your file, it will generate a different file. It will generate either an HTML file for you, like it did here, or it will knit a PDF if I ask it to. So let's see if I can knit to PDF and see what I get. If I knit to PDF, it will generate a PDF file for me, right? Or I can knit to Word and it will generate a Word file. So you can see that the knitting process itself generates a new file that you submit, but you probably will be submitting your HTML file, just because when you show us the code, yeah, you'll probably not submit your R file. You probably will submit the HTML file that you generate, right? Because your HTML file will actually have the code. You can see that the code is displayed in the actual file, right? So let's look at what he was asking you guys to do a bit. So what he wanted you guys to do was type in this line here. So this means that because the coding happens within the R chunk size, you'll actually remove what you see here and put in empty cars, right? And then run it. So you'll actually see that it will show you the database itself, right? So this is the actual, this is the file inside. You can actually get information from the actual thing here. So there's basically 32 rows and 11 variables, because you can keep going this way, right? So if you keep going this way, you keep getting to all the variables. There's another way to actually view it too. You can also go to, glimpse. So glimpse is a function within tidyverse. If you go to glimpse empty cars, it will actually show you, you'll give you more information about your data set, right? So it will tell you the variable type, how many rows you have, how many columns you have. This is within tidyverse. You cannot actually use glimpse unless you first download tidyverse. Now notice, guys, that it has things like DBL. This is called double, which you guys know is like decimal places basically, right? So it's telling you that it's a numerical value that has decimal places basically after the 0. That's what a double means. If it's a string, it will say something, it will say character instead. So what you can see here is that all your variables are actually numerical values. You don't actually have any characters in your data frame, basically. You don't have any like strings, right? Now for your variables. Now, I will also say that if you want to make a new chunk, right? So if you have a Windows, to make a new chunk, it is control. Let me write this down. Control Control Alt I. Let me see. Let me just double check something. I just want to check for myself. Control Shift I. What is it? Let me just Control Shift I. Why is my thing not working? Oh yeah, there you go. It is Control I. Yeah, Control Alt I. Right, so in that order, you just do Control Alt I. This is if you have Windows. And so it generates a new chunk. That's because you would not want, the worst thing to do is to have to copy and paste right? So it would be terrible to have to copy and paste like this and to get a new chunk. I think if you have Mac, it's like Command plus, can someone confirm? I think it might be Command plus Alt plus M, but I actually have it in my GitHub too. I think I might have actually put it in my GitHub. So let me just double check. I think I actually wrote it there from last year. So this is, let me see. I think I have it here. Yeah. So for Mac, it's actually Command Option I. So I'm going to actually copy this. That way people can, no, not this. That's for tidyverse. Where is it? Where is it? Oh yeah, here it is. I think it might be, yeah, Control Shift M. I think it's Control Shift M. Can someone confirm this? For Mac, I think it's this. When you want to generate chunks. So double check and see. The other thing I'm going to put, oh no, that's just for anyone who has it, just so they know how to work it. Just so, anyways, I'll also put that if you don't have it, that's cool. It's something you can Google, but I just want to save people a little bit of time. The other thing I think will be kind of useful, not now, because I don't think he actually asks you to do any type pipelines, but I will say that the other thing you'll find useful is when you're doing tidyverse pipelines, the command is different depending on whether or not you have a Mac. Oh, I see. Yeah, this is it. It's actually Command Option I, sorry. It's Command Option I. It's this, Command Option I. There you go. Now, when we get to tidyverse, you will actually see that the command itself also changes depending on if you're using Mac and Windows. So for those who are using Mac, it turns out that if you want to, what do you call it? So this is going to generate a new R chunk, and this is actually, this is going to generate Control Shift M. This is for Windows, so Control Shift M. This is for Windows. This will actually generate a new tidyverse pipeline, which I'll show you in a second. Generates a new tidyverse pipeline, just like little things that will help you when you start your assignment. This generates a new tidyverse pipeline for Windows, right? Now for Mac, it's actually Command Shift M, right? It's Command Shift M. So it's almost like, or Command Option M, I think. Yeah, Command Option M. Just double check. No, it's Command Shift M. Yeah, this is Mac. So this generates a tidyverse pipeline for Mac. Just make it easier for people. What do I mean by that? That's a to be continued, but this will generate new R chunks. That way you don't have to keep copying and pasting, which is obviously very tedious and annoying. But you can see that this is what you get is what you see here. So all the things I'm generating is what he has in his thing here. So double check, you guys can also do it too, right? You should be able to see all the things he sees. Another really good feature, and this is actually within base R. So base R, so I'll just say that this is actually base R. This is base R, oops. This here is base R. So this, by the way, when I do this thing here, this hashtag base R, this allows me to run code while having text in the actual R chunk. If I want to actually, for instance, label my code or make sense of what I'm doing, I might put that there sometimes so I can, when I go back and look at my code, I remember what I'm doing, because you can see I can still run my actual chunk with this characters inside the actual chunk. But if you remove this thing here, it no longer makes sense. If you try to run it, it will just get confused, right? So because now it thinks it's a variable and it doesn't know what base R is because you didn't define anything, right? So if you put a hashtag, or if you put like a pound sign first, that allows you to actually write things inside your code. But if you don't, it will recognize as a variable that doesn't understand, that you haven't really defined or anything. So it will say unexpected symbol, basically. Right, so anyways, summary is a function in base R, right? It gives you the information about your variables, right? So you can see that the good thing about R Notebook, by the way, is that not only does it give you the output in the console here, but you also see the output in the actual in your window here, in your coding window, because sometimes it's very awkward to look over here But it's very nice to look inside your actual window as you're coding to see what's going on with your variables. But anyways, this is giving you information about like the statistics of your variables. Like I did say that there's no actual strings in your data set. So because there's no strings, it's giving you all the summary statistics, like the 5 summary statistics that you see in STAC, which is like Q1, Q3, the median, the max, the min for each of the variables, right? So this is what it's giving you for each of the variables, merely because they're all themselves numerical values, right? So this might be useful if he asks you questions pertaining to like, what is the max? What is the shape of the distribution? Then you might want to look at the mean and the median to understand the shape of the distribution. So MT cars is just like a database for cars, basically. I don't know. Actually, we can figure that out though. So if you go to help MT cars here, if you go to help MT cars, it will actually tell you what that is. So let's see. So it's motor trend. It stands for motor trend. So it looks like they're doing car road tests. And this is a very old data set. Like I think it's older than all of us. It's from 1974. So you can see that this is it's called motor trend, so MT cars, but they're looking at the performance and consumption of many cars on the road, basically. So you can see that all these variables you see here, which you can see from, let me just blow this up here. You can actually see from the variable labels here. It tells you all the variable, what the variables mean, right? In your data frame. So help is another really good package, another really good function, guys. And actually the help function is embedded in base R, right? So it's embedded in base R. But it gives you if you're confused about what a function is doing or your data set, the best thing to do is put help and the function inside or the data set, and you will get a bunch of information from it, as well as examples, right? So I will, I guess, stop here. And what I probably will do, because you can see that the rest of the stuff is stuff you can do yourself, what I probably will ask you guys to do, which I kind of regret that I can't do, you don't need to submit it. I mean, you can practice. You see how there's assignments here? Yeah, so there's a preview. Do you mean is there a preview window within R itself or within the actual? So practice submitting your assignment here, guys. Right, so practice submitting here just so you know how to submit, right? But there's no marks here, by the way. There's no marks for this, but practice submitting anyway so you know how it looks. And please, guys, when you submit your files, please look and see what it looks like. Don't just assume you submitted and it went through. Look and see how your output looks. If your file doesn't look smooth or there's something, that's how it looks to the TAs too, and you may not get marks, right? But you can practice, just pull out how to practice your, so it's just an exercise, but I will encourage you guys to practice submission so that you know how to do it. Now, somebody asked, is there a preview window for us to go through code and LaTeX output? One other thing I would suggest you guys do is go through the exercises Ken gave you here. Next class, no, you can do PDF as well. That's totally fine. Or even Word, I think would be okay, but Word is probably the ugliest looking. People don't generally use Word. But yeah, I would say go through these exercises here. Yeah, you can totally knit with PDF. Absolutely. I personally knit with PDF. I think it's great. But yeah, so practice ggplot here. Next week, I'm going to be on time. I apologize for that. And I will explain to you guys what this ggplot is doing. But anyways, he does go through these steps here. Ken also explains it to you guys as well. But if you're at any point confused, I will go over it properly next week as to what is going on, because ggplot is really powerful, probably the most powerful thing you'll see in tidyverse. And I think it warrants quite a pretty good explanation. So have a look at this. And I will post this lecture as well as the one I do now for the next class, which probably have more information. So if you guys want to see the full tutorial, what it should have been, I will post it on YouTube. And you guys can certainly have a look as well. I will also post this file when I'm done with the next tutorial, so everybody will have access to everything that happened today. Even if you only got the half version today, you will see the full version in the next tutorial we'll see. But I'll see you guys next week, unless you want to stay, which you can, of course. That's totally cool. But if not, see you guys next week at 9:10 next time. And hello to a new set of students that are coming in. I see there are more students. Hi, guys. No, it's just I have two versions. The first one I came in at around 9:30 because I was trudging through the snow. But yeah, you guys get the full thing. I'm just gonna keep recording because there's no point in turning it off. But anyways, hello, hi guys. The snow is so bad. It took me an hour to get home from where I started, which is 10 minutes away from my apartment, because I got lost and visibility was so poor. I could not see where I was going. It was really bad. Yeah, it was really just really bad. So I'll just pause for a bit and then wait for people to come in. Hi everyone. So I am the TA1 TA for the course, not the TA1 TA. I'm doing the first 2 hours. My name's Nana. I am a third year PhD student in Department of Statistical Sciences at U of T. I'm here to guide your experience in using R. How many of you have used R for the very first time? Anyone like just seeing R for the first time? And if you are seeing it for the first time, have you guys opened up Jupyter Notebook? Because if you, I don't know if any of you have heard about the way the course ran last year, but before we used either R on your computer or we used our cloud, but our cloud's being phased out. So we actually have to use Jupyter. If you're not actually going to be, if you're not actually using, if you're not actually using if you're not doing what do you call it? If not using if you're not using on your actual computer, the best course of action to use Jupyter Notebook, which Ken does actually walk you guys through here. So if you want to know where assignment 0 is, it's actually here. So if you, this is something I discussed in the last tutorial session, but anyways, it's in assignments. I highly encourage you guys to practice submitting assignment 0, just because one thing I've noticed is sometimes people don't look to see if what they're submitting is good. So they don't know that what they submitted doesn't actually, they don't know that what do you call it? What they submitted doesn't actually load, or there's a problem and then it's too late. So double check, guys, and see that yours makes sense, right? It's loading, whatever. That way you don't end up with a situation where you said, I submitted my assignment, but the TA can't see it. And then you lose marks for it. Okay, so assignment 0 is also there. You can see if you open it, you can just submit it. 2 people already practiced, which is good. Because you can see that because there's actually no marks, it's actually available till April 13th. That's probably because the last day of the semester, like there's no marks for this assignment. You can actually see here, it says this does not count for the final grade. So you can mess up as much as you want. It's just practice for your real assignment, but you will see that when your real assignment begins, obviously you won't have the end of the semester to submit. You probably have like a week, maybe a couple of days from when it opens, depending on his syllabus. But anyways, let's get started. So if you guys are using Jupyter, you can sign in, and then you will see that there's a prompt that tells you whether or not you want to open up a Jupyter Lab, Notebook, or RStudio. Click RStudio, and what you should see will look something like this, where you have the actual script part here, the console, and the environment. I actually have that too, but I changed my formatting just because I like the darker background, so mine looks like this. If you download R into your computer, it will look completely different, because I think what it looks like is that it has the environment over here. If you just download on your computer, then it has your script here, and I believe your console's down here, but you can obviously change the settings yourself by going here. Let me see, where is it? Maybe it's the view. Anyways, you can actually change the way you can change your setup here, right? I just changed mine because I like it to look like this, but when you download it, it may look a little bit different, and in fact, the color will look like this. But anyways, I digress. If you are using it on your computer, that's cool too. But once you open up your thing, what he wants you to do is to create a directory so that all your files go there. It's just easier sometimes to find your stuff. And to create your directory, you just go to File, New File. And then if you go to, new project. I don't want to actually, don't save. I'm not going to save. Anyways, you'll see that you'll just go to new directory, or if you already have a directory because you did this before, you go to existing directory and then call it whatever you want. So he actually called his directory STAC33, probably because that's what the course used to be called. But it's now called C33. So this is obviously, he probably may have had that directory from a while ago, from when the course was C32. The course actually split into 2 different courses just recently, where before it used to have both the stats majors and specialists with the applied stats minors. Then they realized that that's 2 different cohorts. So they split the course into 2. And I think only people who are actually majors or specialists of the statistics stream, like the theoretical one, can take this version of the course, just because he goes over some things that he wouldn't expect the applied stats minor students to take. So everyone here should have probably taken B57 at the very least to take this course. Okay, so anyways, you choose whatever directory you want, call it whatever you'd like. After you've done that, you will see that all your files will be in there, right? Then the next thing to do is to obviously make sure you have tidyverse installed. Actually, if you're using Jupyter, the package is already installed for you. So you can see he actually skipped a step here. He's almost assuming that most students will be using Jupyter. But if you're not using Jupyter, guys, and you're using R from your laptop, is anyone here using R from their laptop and not Jupyter? Because it's kind of an important thing. So who's using R from their laptop and not Jupyter? There's something I want to make sure you guys know in general. Yeah, so you can see that anyone who's using from their laptop, yeah, so Jupyter, guys, already has all of the packages installed basically, right? But if you are using any packages in your computer, you have to download it first. So most people know that to download tidyverse, obviously, but and in fact, not just tidyverse, any package you use across the way, you have to download it if you're using it on your computer, whereas it's probably already there for the most part. In Jupyter. Jupyter probably already has a package for you already installed. But anyways, if you are using Jupyter and the package is not there, you can go to packages here and click on something. If you click on it, that will allow you to download the thing, because not all the packages are obviously installed in Jupyter, especially if a package is kind of obsolete or not very well used. So you might want to check that out. Otherwise, yeah. The other thing to do is use install.packages function, which will also allow you to download things. And then once you have it, because it's external, you have to use a library. As you can see here, you will always call library whatever you want to use, right? So I'm going to use tidyverse. You will actually see that it will actually load up whatever package is inside of there, because you know that tidyverse is a compilation of packages, right? So in fact, if with all the packages that are in tidyverse, you could in theory install them separately, right? So you can see that I already had tidyverse installed, but like, let's suppose, sorry, I already had it loaded from the previous tutorial session, but it looks like this. You can see that there are a compilation of packages, guys. And by that, I mean that all of these things you could have actually installed individually, but in installing tidyverse is in its entirety, you have all these things inside. We will actually be using these 4 things here and dplyr a lot. Per, string R, and forcats, you probably won't use too much in the course, but the other ones we will use a lot. And I was telling in the tutorial that when you open a notebook or even an RMD file, that you will see that you can only actually really write outside the chunks, and you can only code inside the chunks. So if you write inside the chunks, it will get confused, right? So the only reason why I can put empty cars here is because empty cars is an actual data frame, right? It's not me writing things arbitrarily, it's a data frame, right? Oops, what did I do here? Yeah. However, if I do something like the following, empty, and I just wrote like this, because empty, it doesn't mean anything. It will say object empty not found. So you cannot write like that in the code. However, you can do this. You can do this inside the code and then run it, because you can see that it allows you to actually write inside the chunks. if you do like the pound sign first, right? To cut that's if this is a word of a tip, I guess, because sometimes if you want to, in some sense, if you want to mark your code or like remind yourself why you did a particular move in your code, you might want to write it down inside your chunk so you don't forget. And you can, as long as you put the pound sign first, that it becomes sort of like a hashtag instead of an actual variable instead of an actual variable it's not defined. Okay, so empty cars is a data set. I will say that there are a couple of things you can do to really get at what is inside your data set, but if you just have a look inside and see, you'll see that there are 32 rows and 11 columns, but you can actually do better than this. Because if you look at the glimpse function, you do glimpse of empty cars, you'll actually see this. So glimpse is actually a function inside of tidyverse. You actually have to have called the library tidyverse to even use this, but you can see that it tells you how many rows are in there and how many columns. And it also gives you more than that. It also tells you the type of variable you're working with. Here you can see that all of these variables are actually doubles, and what that means, there's decimal place after the 0. There's no characters here, but that means strings. If there were strings, you would see character here instead of double, which means that one of the questions where he asks you guys to do to run summary of empty cars. The reason why you can do summary of empty cars is because, so you can see he asks you here to do summary of empty cars. The reason why you can do summary of empty cars is because all the variables themselves are actually quantitative. So if I do summary of empty cars, I get the 5 number summary statistics and the mean. Because you guys know that the min, the max, Q1, Q3, and the median is a 5 number summary, but it also gives you the mean. Sometimes you would, the reason why it gives you this, and this is actually a base R thing. I put base R here, so you guys know that it's actually a base R thing. But the cool thing about this thing is that if you want to know the skew of a distribution without actually plotting something, you can get a hint about that from looking at the relationship of the mean and the median, because you guys know that, for instance, if the median is bigger than the mean, you probably have a left skewed distribution, whereas the opposite is true if it's right skewed. So this kind of summary gives you a bit of a hint as to the characteristics of your distribution before you actually plot things, which is why he's kind of giving you that information. And at some point, you might even say on an assignment, determine the skew of the distribution. Is it right skewed? Is it left skewed? Is it symmetric? And the reason why he's asking you that is because there are some tests you can only perform on things that are symmetric, and you can get some insight as to whether or not your distribution is even symmetric or not by looking at the median and the mean and all the numbers together, basically, even looking at Q1 in relation to the median and Q3 in the relationship to the median. Because obviously if Q1 is close to the median, it indicates something that could be right skewed. But if the median is close to Q3, it indicates something that's left skewed, right? So you can see here, for instance, this here, I suspect is actually right skewed because the mean is bigger than the median and Q1 is close to the median. So I can see this without even plotting it, right? So that's probably why he wants you to have a look at these kind of things. And you can do it because all the variables here are actually quantitative. The other thing I want to point out is that you can create chunks without having to copy and paste, right? So the worst thing to do would actually be to copy the whole thing like this and then and then paste it like this. You know, like the worst thing to do this, like to paste it to create another chunk. No, there's an easier way to do that. The way you'd actually want to do that is to use Control-Alt-I if you're using Windows, right? So Control-Alt-I creates a new chunk. If you're using Mac, it's Command-Option-I. That would help you generate a new chunk. And then if the other thing is for tidyverse pipeline, which we're not going to see in this class, but you will eventually see at some point. And I will post this code later on for you guys if you guys want to practice. This here will create tidyverse pipelines. What is a pipeline? Well, if I do something like this, a pipeline looks like this, right? So it looks like this, just literally is this thing here. That's a pipeline, right? Which you'll see a lot in tidyverse, which probably he'll introduce next week. And you'll probably see that in some kind of small way. You'll see it in assignment 1, which will be for marks. Okay, so any questions so far? You guys have any questions about this? Okay, so what I will actually show you guys, there's you see how it says it's a poor man's box plot? Does anyone know why he's saying this is a poor man's box plot? Why do you guys think he's saying this is a poor man's box plot? What do you notice about this box plot function? What do you guys notice? It's basic, it's in base R basically, right? This is a base R box plot. It's not good. This whole course is really to introduce tidyverse, guys. So we're not going to fixate on this too. But what he's saying is that look at this poor man's box plot. Why? Because if you just do box plot, right? So let's look at this. You know, let's look at the poor man's box plot. So let's, you know, I'm just gonna write a note here. Let's have a look at the poor man's box plot. Let us have a look at the poor man's box plot. This is, you know, this is within a, you know, within base R, because we know that tidyverse has a really powerful package called ggplot that allows us to make superior plots, right? So, yeah, you can see here that if I just do box plot, what it is for empty cars, box plot. This is also, by the way, guys, so doing this empty cars $MPG. This is something you do when you want to pull a variable in base R. So you first have to call the data frame first, and then the $ allows you to pull a variable within the data frame. If you put MPG $empty cars, it doesn't make any sense because MPG is not a data frame. So you're pulling a variable from a data frame means you have to dictate, you have to first list the actual data frame and then pull the variable. But there's a better way to avoid doing this, right? So here's a poor man's box plot, right? But there's a better way to avoid doing this. Does anyone know how you can avoid doing the $ like this? There's a smarter way to do this than to, without having to do it, because this can get pretty messy. Other than using tidyverse, we can actually pull out this variable using it in a tidy way, using tidyverse, which we haven't learned yet. There's a way in base R to avoid having to do too many $ things, which is very messy, right? So the thing to do is to attach your data frame, right? So you see that I'm going to do this, but now if I attach empty cars, right? So here I'm going to attach attach variables, attach the variables to attach the data frame to the environment, data frame to my global environment, right? So then you can see that it's attached. And now if you can see that it literally says the following object is masked, right? So the reason why MPG is masked in some sense, because I already called it here. But anyways, now if I do box plot of MPG, you can see that it will run without me having to do the $, right? So you can see that if you want to avoid having to do the pulling variables every time you're trying to work with a function, you want to attach your data frame. And this is true even when you use tidyverse. You may want to first attach any data frame you create, guys. You may want to attach it. Now, you can also detach it. When would you want to detach things? You can also detach. Detach allows you to remove variables remove data frame from environment. Why would you want to do this? This is because sometimes you may have more than one variable using the same name. If you created a new variable and it has the same name as an old variable, you may want to detach your old data frame so that your variables don't get confused in your environment. So sometimes you want to detach a variable merely because you realize that you've labeled a variable the same name as something else we used to be called, and they're different variables, and there may be a confusion in your environment if you don't remove it, right? So this is why sometimes you can do that. But just that if you're curious, basically, and you want to remove your data frame, that's how you do it. Anyways, any questions about this? So he's telling you that this is not great, obviously, right? So that there's a better way to do this. Now, first of all, I'm going to show you what happens if I knit this, right? So I'm going to knit HTML. There's two things to do. You can knit to, somebody asked in a previous tutorial, can we knit to PDF, right? And you can, if you knit to HTML, it looks like this, right? Make sure, guys, and the reason why there's only one box plot is because obviously this one here is overridden by this one here. Now, you can see, guys, that I haven't used, so the one thing you want to make sure is that when you publish this assignment, and I highly encourage you guys to publish it, that then upload your assignment 0 to see that when you upload it, it looks like this. Make sure you're checking to see what your homework looks like when you submit it, so that, because you don't want it to be the case that the TA cannot see your work, right? And then you've been confused or something. You thought you should have gotten high marks, but the TA gave you a 0 because they couldn't read what they couldn't open your file. So have a look and make sure. That's actually why he gives you an assignment 0, so you can actually practice, but I digress. The other thing I want to point out is that you can see here, he gives you some kind of information here where he says, he gives you this kind of information here about message equals false. This is because if I do the following, so let us play with, let me just not be late. So let's play with the tidyverse functions. If I try to load the library tidyverse, right? And then I just knit this thing. Let's see what happens. You see, you got this, right? This is a problem, especially if, right, well, the first thing the TA sees when they open up your R file is the package loading inside your HTML file, and this would also load as well if you decided to load to PDF. If you have LaTeX in your background and you want to load to PDF instead, you can do that, right? So if I knit to PDF instead, because I use LaTeX, what I will get is the following. But you can see that even with this PDF file, I get this thing here at the bottom where it's loading the packages. This is not good, right? So it doesn't look professional. It's something you wouldn't want the TA to see when they're grading, because sometimes even in this assignment, even presentation matters. So how you format your assignment, that includes how your write-up, is your write-up grammatical? Does it read, you know, like in a way that is clean? Is your paper messy or sloppy, right? And sloppiness entails not hiding or removing the loading of the packages, basically, right? So make sure, guys, you have thought about the presentation just as much as the quality of the answers, right? So if your answers sound, but things look messy, it may not generate full marks. So make sure you're thinking about these things. But he does give you a way to remove it. So message equals false is the way in which you should try to hide that kind of thing, right? So you can see that the thing to do is to, right, just message equals false, right? So this is to remove the loading of the thing, right? So that's the point. You can see now it's gone, right? So just try to, and even more than that, because you can see that even if I remove that, there's still something there called, you see the warning is still there. So I should then put warning equals false, basically, to hide the warning too, right? So I don't want anything to show that is sloppy, right? So I would just put message equals false, warning equals false to remove all of that stuff, right? And so it doesn't look messy in your paper. And I'll do the same thing with HTML, so that when I run it, you don't see that kind of stuff. And the funny thing is that even though you've put message equals false, warning equals false in your actual chunk, it doesn't show itself on the assignment. Sorry, it doesn't show itself, so it doesn't make your paper look ugly. All you see is the code itself. You don't see the things you did to hide the code, right? Hide the web messages. So you don't see this come up, even though it's in your actual RMD file. So it really does look clean when you take the time to remove things that can make your paper look a bit sloppy. So it's definitely worth the time to make sure you're doing those things. Anyways, I want to show you guys how to make a nicer box plot. First, I'll do what he wants you to do, which is a scatter plot. Then I'm going to show you how to make a better box plot of the same plot we did, right? So first, let's let's do something. Now, what if you can see that he has everything expressed here? He has all of the features to get this plot, but let's take a couple of steps backwards, basically, right? Now, first of all, ggplot does require you guys to feed it a data frame. So let's call it mtcar. So first thing you do, you feed a data frame, right? You haven't asked to do anything. All you've done is feed a data frame. Now, again, he wants you to, when you put x is equal to HP, means x is on the y-axis. So this is a coordinate system, and I guess MPG. This is a coordinate system. Now, what will happen if all I do is load this thing here? And I don't ask ggplot to do any kind of special thing with the plot. Well, if I run this, what you will see is you'll get just a coordinate system of what? Of the range of values you have for HP and MPG. Now, to see why this is true, imagine if I go to summary of HP. What do you see here? You see that the minimum is 52, the maximum is 335. This is why you see the value span between this to this. Similarly, for summary of MPG, you can see that the minimum is around 10 and the maximum is around 35. That's why you see the range is like this. But you see that all it does is put the variables on the coordinates system. I have not actually asked it to do anything yet, right? But now you can see that, so what did I do so far? I gave it a data frame to be able to read these two variables here. And now the order in which you place these two things in matters. If I put MPG here and HP here, it will flip the actual axis so that now HP is on the y-axis and MPG is on the x-axis. This is a big thing that I like to point out, because last time when I was TAing this course, I noticed that when asked to make a scatter plot for two variables, students sometimes interchanged x and y by mistake. And then when they did a linear regression model, all the variables were off because their x and y was in the wrong position. So please be careful about these things. Make sure you're clear in your mind as to what x and y happens to be so that you don't make those mistakes, right? But now you're being asked to make a ggplot, right? So let's do that. So when you put geom point, geom is a function that does many things. If you do point, what do you get? You get just a scatter plot, right? This is what you get. I'm asking for a scatter plot that looks like this. So this is what you see Ken making here, right? It's just, you haven't asked to do anything other than make a scatter. You could change the color if you want to, the points. It could be, I guess, let's see. You can do something like color equals red, and what do you get? You get that the points will turn red. So there are many things you could do here to make your graph look kind of funky if you'd like, right? So let's say red is my favorite color, so it's always the thing I go to, but really speaking, probably blue points look better for scatter plot. You can do things like this. So there's a lot, and the reason why it's COLOR is because Hadley Wickham's American, so they uses the American spelling. I think even actually this could work too, right? Let me just see. Yeah, so it's kind of flexible in this way that you can do COL or COLOR, and it's the same basically. Anyways, you can see that there are lots of things to do. You can even change, guys, the labels of the X and Y axis. So if you don't want to put MP, if you don't want to put MPG and HP, you want to actually put what the true label happens to be, let's go and see how we can change the label. First of all, let's see what these variables actually are. So if I go to help, help is a built-in function in base R, right? That will allow me to look up things I don't understand, whether it's functions or data frames. Help tells me what I'm working with. So here it turns out that HP is called gross horsepower, and MPG is miles per gallon. So we can actually change these. So again, help is a built-in function in base R. You do not have to download, you don't have to import tidyverse to make this run. It totally runs on its own. It's what you use if you're confused about any packages or functions in R and you don't know how to use it. It will tell you what it is. I'm going to give you examples as to how to use it, right? So now if I do plus X label, I guess, right? So just call it gross horsepower. Let's see what we get. So you can see that now it's called this, right? So this is kind of important, right? So when you're submitting nice assignments, you certainly want to make sure that it's as nicely formatted as possible. So that's why, right, it probably matters, right? So you shouldn't just have labels of the variables as they are. You should leave them as they are. You should change to what the variables actually are. That way the grader knows what you're looking at. So what they're looking at. So this is what you're actually, this is as clean as I can get, I suppose, in terms of the labels, where I've actually changed the labels according to what it is in the data frame. Anyways, let's keep going now and include include the line he has here. This is a linear regression model he's doing here. When he puts geom smooth, he's saying, let's put a line of best fit through these points, because you can actually see from the points that there's some kind of decreasing linear trend. That's like decreasing downwards, right? You can see that as the gross horsepower increases, it seems that the miles per gallon decreases. Maybe it's because your car is more efficient. So how much you use, sorry, your car is probably becoming less efficient, which means that you may, I guess, inevitably get less far in how far you've moved for every gallon you use, right? So your car probably becomes less efficient as it gets heavier, right? So which means you probably need more gas for shorter trips, right? So anyways, we can put a line of best fit. This is called geom smooth. So you can see that every time you want the graph to do something new, you will actually add features. So maybe I'll add it here. You can see that the addition of things is actually through the plus sign. You keep doing plus, you've added something to the graph. Now here I'm going to put method equals LM. It's called linear model, right? So again, when you do the add addition sign, it's like you're adding features to your plot. So you can see here that what you get is this, right? So now it looks like this. Probably I want to change my points back to black, but I could also change my line color probably. Let's see what happens if I do this. Do I get a red line? I do. So you can see that there's multiple things you can do to change the colors and whatever. If you have a certain preference, how your graph would look, there's multiple things you can do to make it look pretty or whatever. Yeah. So any questions so far? You can see that ggplot is pretty powerful, right? Because now if I want to go back, guys, and actually make the GG. So now let's try to go back and create the box plot for MPG, right? Now, guys, if I do that, what do I have? Well, I'm gonna, the thing about, does anyone know what's interesting about the box plot in comparison to the scatter plot? So what did you guys notice about the scatter plot? Like, what did you guys see about the scatter plot that was different from the box plot? There's something about the scatter plot that is inherently a bit different. Yeah, box is one thing, but you can see that this is bivariate. A scatter plot implicitly implies you have two variables and you want to examine the relationship between the two variables, right, guys? So it's basically, it's essentially, what do you call it? It's bivariate, right? You're trying to see the relationship between two variables. But for the box plot we saw earlier on, you can see that it is actually univariate, guys. There's only one variable you're looking at. You're trying to look at the distribution of MP cars alone, which means that you still need to feed the MT cars data frame, except now when you put AES, you're only putting one variable. Why? Because you're only looking at one variable. It's no longer bivariate. Now let's have a peek at what it looks like if all we plot is just this, where we haven't asked the we have not asked the thing to do it, the ggplot to do anything. So let's have a look and see. Ooh. Darn it. Let's run it. Cool. You see that you get this, guys. So what does it give you? It gives you just a plot with nothing because you haven't asked it to do anything. So again, the first thing it does is it plots the coordinate system, then you have to ask R to do something basically, right? Or you have to ask ggplot to do something. So what am I going to ask ggplot to do? I'm going to ask ggplot to make a box plot. So you can see it's going to be geom box plot, right? So instead of geom, you see geom point gives me scatter plots, right? Now I'm going to ask for geom box plot. And what do you get? You get this, right? This is what it looks like. Now, again, we could change the label of the box plot. We probably should, right? I'm going to steal this. I'm going to call it X label. Oops. Now, obviously, like I'm going to leave alone. I'm not going to do any of the features, but you guys know if you want to change the color of things, you could just change the color inside the thing, like I did in the previous one. But what do you guys notice about the box plot here? Do you guys have any outliers in this box plot? Any outliers, guys? Yeah. Exactly. There's one outlier. And you might say, why on earth is ggplot positioning the box plot in a horizontal way, right? But think about this. What are you actually doing when you do that? I would claim it's better to present it like this. Why? Because look at this, guys. If I want to know about the shape of the distribution, I'll just do something like this, right? So let's see. My box plot looks like this. I know I have one point out here. I know my median is back here. I have something that looks like this, I guess. Let me see. Right, something that looks like that, I guess, up to the air. And then I have a thing that goes like this. If I just draw this line like this, I get this distribution that looks like that. This is why it's actually positioned horizontally. It's because you can actually see the distribution is what? What's the skew of this distribution here? What does distribution skew from this plot that I've drawn here? What's this? Is it skewed in any kind of way? What do you guys think? You guys think there's a skew? There's a skew. Now, the way you determine the way you determine if it's left or right skewed is that where the tail is facing. This is a long right tail, so it is positively skewed. It's right skewed, right? Because the tail is long on the right, it is right skewed. What does that mean? It means it has very far outliers to the right, basically. The tail is to the right because it has big outliers to the right. And what it means is that the frequency of observations that are very, very large, exactly, the other way around, the mean is less than the median. All right, so here's the thing. No, that's okay. I'm going to explain. No, that's totally fine. Don't feel bad. Now, I want to point out something to you guys. When the skew is right skewed, you will actually see very big outliers to the right because the frequency of observations that are very large is very low, right? When you have a low frequency of observations to the right, it means that it's very unlikely for observations to be that far into the tail to the right. That is right skewed. On the other hand, if you have observations that are very observations that are like the opposite direction. If you have observation that looks like this, right, where you can see that there's outlier, the frequency of observations that are low are very uncommon. That is left skewed. This is negatively skewed, negative skewed, left skewed, right? It's the positive skew. Oh, my pen is running out. I have to recharge it. Right skewed, right? So this is what happens here. You can see that Q1 is the 25th percentile. Now the median is very low. When you have something that's right skewed, the median is kind of low. It's like back here. Oops. The median is low, right? A low median is like back here towards Q1. So look, there's a couple of interesting features about right skewed things. When things are right skewed, it turns out that the median is close to Q1. Median, my pen is dying. median near Q1. Near Q1, right? When it's left skewed, the median is near Q3. Why? Because you see the median is probably somewhere up here towards the 75th percentile, basically, right? You also can see the median, that you can see that the median is going to be bigger than the mean in the right skewed thing. The median is actually less than the mean when it's right skewed. Why is that? Because when you have big outliers, right, that pull the mean upwards, the median is more robust. The median is more robust to big outliers, but the mean will be pulled upwards. In contrast, when you have something that's left, yeah, it's right skewed. When you have something that's left skewed, you will actually the median, when it's left skewed, the median is actually bigger than the mean because the mean is pulled downwards by low values. That's how you know the skew, basically. So you can see there's a long left tail when it is left skewed, and there's a long right tail when it's right skewed. So here you can see that this is actually a right skewed thing, guys, because the tail is long to the right? And that is actually why the box plot for ggplot presents it horizontally, so you can kind of see, but it's kind of probably right skewed. And when you have right skewed distributions, guys, you'll notice that you'll notice the outliers tend to happen on the right. When it's left skewed, you'll see the outliers tend to happen on the left. So the fact that you have an upper outlier here, it probably indicates that it's right skewed too. But you can also see that from the shape that it's right skewed as well. Right? So he will ask you these kind of questions where he says something like, okay, explain, he'll say something like, explain the shape of the distribution. How do you know? You might want to give a couple of, don't just say it's right skewed. If he says what is shape of distribution, don't say it's right skewed, explain yourself, right? Just say it is right skewed. You can see that the tail is long to the right. Also, the median is less than the mean base. You have to give some context. Don't just say it's right skewed and move on, because you will not get full marks there, right? You want to give as much context as you can to show that you're making sense of things. The other thing he wants you guys to know, which we'll talk about in the last couple of minutes, is how to read data frames in. You can see that this data frame we were talking about here, guys, it was actually built into base R. But how do you actually download data frames that are not actually inherent to your actual R environment, right? So how do we download variables, data frames, and that are external, basically, right? Let's make a new chunk. First of all, this is his URL of jumping. I think this is a jumping rats, basically. Let's see. So if I just do like this, let's see what we have. I just want to see my underscore URL. So what we have is something. Actually, we can probably even see it from his site. I just want to see for a second. Oops. We just go here. I just want to see what he has. You can see this is from his website, but what he has is this. You can see that there's actually a space between, so there's actually two variables here, the group type, which is control, low jump or high jump, and then the density of the rats. So I think you want to see if the density of the rats is in some sense related to their size, right? Or sorry, is related to their, how high they jump, right? Do rats that are like heavier jump lower, are the ones that are kind of, smaller, the ones that jump higher? These are questions you can ask. You can see there's a space between the two variables, which is why when he opens up the data frame, he actually has the following here. He says read underscore delimiter. The delimiter is a kind of like, it's a delimiter is kind of like, what do you call it? It's sort of like a thing that separates data values, basically, right? It could be at one space, it could be two spaces, it could be anything, but here it's actually one space. That's why he has this like hashtag here, because the variables are separated by one space, basically. So he calls it rats. Read underscore delimiter, guys. It's a thing inside, it's a function inside of a read R. So it is, let me just point it out here. Answer. We have to use read R in tidyverse, right? So you can see that read underscore delimiter. So note that read underscore delim is a function inside of readr, which is inside of tidyverse, right? So you cannot actually load this function until you actually first, you have to first download tidyverse. So you can see that what it actually tells you is the variable types. It tells you that you have two variables. One is a character. That's why it says called character. One is a double basis. One is numerical, one is a string. You can confirm that by looking at glimpse of rat, right? If you look at glimpse of rats, it will tell you the same thing, right? It will tell you that group is a character, it's a string, and then you have a double, right? So it's saying the same thing as your thing here. It's just telling you what kind of variable types you have, basically. Okay, that's kind of cool, right? Because now here comes the part that is tidyverse. I did say that I left you guys a little bit of leeway to figure out how to use tidyverse pipelines if you were in Mac or Windows. If you're in Windows, it's Control-Shift-M, but it's Command-Shift-M if you're in Mac. Now, what are we actually going to do here? Let's note here. So, first prelude to pipelines. Right? This is him being ambitious because you probably will see this next week. Anyways, oops. Let me first make my chunk before I make this. Control-Alt-I. Okay, so you can see that here so how does pipelines work? Pipelines work, guys, from left to right. Every manipulation you're doing is happening from here downwards, right, or forward. So first, the rats data frame is the initial data frame. Now, when you do group by, it is a function inside of tidyr, basically. This group by is tidyr, guys. This is a function inside of tidyr. So you can see now we are using tidyr inside of tidyverse. So you can see that, here we are using tidyr. You can see that you really use everything in tidyverse, right? Start from rat, which is the initial thing. This is me doing a pipeline. When I do group by, I guess in this case here, what was the variable called? Group by, what is the variable called? Group. If I want to check the mean of each group, it makes sense to first group by control, low jump and high jump first, right? So you can see that if you just look at this, you haven't done anything yet, but so it looks like the initial data frame still. However, tidyr knows that whatever manipulation I do next is going to partition the manipulations according to the group type, basically. Because now, if I want to look at something like the mean, if I want to summarize the mean of each thing, right? Let's say I want to do that, then summarize by mean will give me this, right? You can see that the only reason why I get 3 different means is because I first group by. If you remove group by and you just do something like the following, all it will do is give you the grand mean, because it will not recognize that you're trying to actually determine the mean according to groups. So you can see that every manipulation you do has to happen from left to right, right? Oops. Has to happen from left to right, right? Oops. This is well. What was the group name again? Yeah, every manipulation has to happen from left to right. So this means that, yeah, it means your first action is to group them up by group and then to summarize. So you can even change things from not mean, but even if you want to know things like standard deviation or variance, you just change the function. You just change the summary itself. If you want to add things to, like maybe you want to be IQR, you probably can actually do that. I wonder if it even has IQR. Let's see, QR, and let me just check, see what it has. Let's call it IQR equals IQR. And let's say density, and let's see if it actually does it. Probably it will. Yeah. So you can see that whatever you want it to do, you just ask, basically. The The reason why he's asking for the mean is probably because he wants to know there's a density difference across the different groups. You can see that certainly it's true that high jump has the biggest density, whereas the lowest density is in control, right? Now, the other thing I asked is, do you guys want me to post the code and the recordings for you guys? Would that help you guys? Okay, so I'm going to, cool. I'm going to give you guys, so this is my GitHub. Oh, so, and I'm going to actually post it now after class. And I will also, this is my GitHub, and I will also post it on YouTube. So my channel's here, so it will come up really soon. I'm just record it. I'm just gonna post it here. So you'll find the video here. Yeah, so that will be there very soon for you guys. No worries. And you can have a look and toggle around if you're curious how to redo some stuff we did in class. You didn't find that easy, and that will be good preparation for assignment 1. But have a good week, everyone. See you guys next week. Stay safe, everyone. Yeah, good point. Bye, everyone.